welcome to another installment of the Ribbon Skirt Chronicles series. Today, as you can tell from the title, I'm going to be showing you how to apply the ribbons to your ribbon skirts. This method also works for anything else that you're applying ribbon to. Applying ribbon to bags, shirts, vests. Quick note, I apologize for the audio if it isn't up to par. I cut the cord to my mic on accident. As always, all of the videos in the Ribbon Skirt Chronicles series will be placed into a playlist, and that playlist will be linked down below. So if you're looking for more information than what you see in this video, go and check out that playlist. There will be more videos all about making ribbon skirts. So yeah, again, today, as you can tell from the title, we're going to be learning how to apply ribbon. So first and foremost, I want to talk about the different kinds of ribbon. This is a question that gets brought up or asked of me every now and then. So typically, mostly everybody that puts ribbon on skirts, shirts, vests, bags, whatever, we typically use satin ribbon. Now there are a few different kinds of satin ribbon that you'll see, and it really doesn't matter what kind, but just in case you're wondering, there is double-sided satin ribbon and there's single-faced satin ribbon. So the double-faced satin ribbon looks like this right here, and that just means the shiny side is on both sides. As for the single-faced satin ribbon, the shiny side is only on one side, whereas the other doesn't have any of the shine on it. In the case that you use the single-faced satin ribbon, you would place the non-shiny side against the fabric and have the shiny side on the outside visible. For the double side or the double-faced, it really doesn't matter. The only time I ever see anybody being specific about wanting double-faced over single-faced is if they're putting some dangles in a skirt. And those are where the ribbons hang outside of the side seams. Now, while there's different faces of satin ribbon, there's also different sizes. This is kind of on the wider side. This is a 1.5 inch size ribbon. And then here we have a 1 inch size ribbon. And here, this is a 5/8 inch. So what that means is just a smidge wider than a 1/2 inch. Typically, what we see a lot is the 1 inch size ribbon on ribbon skirts and such. I went and snatched up a thinner one so you could see. There are no rules about this though. It is purely creative design. It's what you're looking for. It's whatever you are wanting your skirt to look like, whether you want ultra thin ribbons, wider ones, a mix of all. You might also see ribbon skirts with other types of ribbon that aren't satin. So here, this is a velvet ribbon. You might see different types of trim. You might see rickrack, as well as a range of other textures. It's just most of the time it's satin ribbon. The only notes I want to make about choosing the right ribbon for your project is making sure that you don't have ribbon that is very loosely woven and it's going to really fray and fall apart or be easily damaged through washing, or ribbon that has wire in it. Sometimes ribbon will have wire around the edges of it, and that will never fare very well on your ribbon skirt. So this is just an example of like a type of ribbon that I wouldn't use on a skirt or shirt or bag or whatever. And this is kind of a mixture of both things that I just mentioned. It's very loosely woven. As you can, there's even a hole in it right there from a needle holding it. I've had this ribbon for a very long time. So it frays very easily. I wouldn't really trust this being washed a lot. And it also has wires in the edges of it. So you can tell like the warping on the ends. There's even a piece of wire sticking out of this right here. And you don't want that on your ribbon skirt, shirt, bag, vest. This ribbon is mostly just like craft ribbon, or not really something that's supposed to be on garments. So besides the ribbon, some materials that you might need, definitely a measuring tape, either a measuring tape, or you could use a drafting ruler, also any regular rulers that you might have, any sort of something that can measure. I always have any beginners to ribbon skirts that I teach use glue sticks, specifically these type of like school glue sticks. If they're Elmer's, it really doesn't matter. If they're purple, if they're not, just a washable glue stick. Don't worry about the glue sticks. They are heat and water soluble. So when you put the ribbon skirt into the washer, this glue is just gonna wash away. This is only to help you sew the ribbons on. Another option that I know some people use, I have honestly never used this myself, nor have I personally seen anybody use it. I just know some people use these sort of heat and bond like strip sets. As you can tell, I haven't used it. It's still in the package. I think I actually got this at a powwow giveaway. I don't really see any reason to use these. Some people don't like them because since there's so much glue on them, it might leave a residue on your sewing needle on your machine. So just keep that in mind. Especially this one, it does say no sew, and that's probably why, because of the whole residue on the needle issue. So, but if you like these, or if you think that they would work for you, do what works best for you. Grab these. You also don't have to use any of these at all. Typically, when I sew ribbon skirts, I just use a measuring tape and I measure as I sew. I might use a glue stick if I'm working with a fabric that is kind of hard to work with and I'm having trouble getting the ribbon to lay on it properly, but most of the time I just use my measuring tape. Either way, I'm going to be showing you both methods of using a glue stick and sewing without a glue stick today. I am, however, not going to be using this today, so you won't see me use it on video. If you are curious how to use these, I do use heat and bond in my applique video, which will be linked in this playlist. Otherwise, it's basically you just iron it to the ribbon, peel off the paper, and then iron the ribbon to the skirt, because the iron melts the glue that makes the ribbon stick. All right, enough about that. Let's get to learning how to attach ribbon. Okay, so here I have a ribbon skirt already cut out and ready to go. I have both panels right here, and what we want to do is only work with one panel at a time. So I'm going to take this one and set it aside. Now, be careful. This has gotten me before. Make sure that you are having the side that's going to be showing an outside of the skirt facing up. I've applied ribbon to the wrong side before. So definitely before we get adding any ribbon to the skirt, the first thing you're going to want to do is select a layout for your ribbons and design how you want them to be. So I would suggest taking the colors that you've chosen and laying them out onto your actual skirt to get a visual for how the colors you picked are going to look. Now you can decide if they're going to have spaces between them or if they're going to be next to each other. You can decide in what order are these ribbons going to be placed. You can decide if you want different thickness of ribbons amongst the design. I do want to note, this trips up a lot of beginners. The more ribbons that you pick, that you put on your skirt, the more sewing there's going to be. I just like to give a fair warning about that, because sometimes people don't realize that putting 8 ribbons on means like how much sewing is involved in that. You have to sew each side of each ribbon on, and then you also have to do the whole process twice because you have a front panel and then the back panel that we just set to the side. So now that we have our design figured out and it's time to start applying the ribbons to the skirt, I am first going to start with the ribbon that is on the very bottom of the design. So I'll take these ones and set them aside. Perfect timing for me to accidentally grab the fabric, because my next point is I want to make sure that my fabric is laid out to be nice and straight. If you have these like cutting surfaces with rulers on them, that makes this process a lot easier, because then you can take the bottom and line it up with the ruler to make sure that you have everything nice and straight, 90-degree angles, all of the above. You can also iron the fabric to get rid of any creases. That will make the ribbon application process easier. I've been sewing for 20 years though. I'm comfortable with that crease being there. So now that we only have our bottom ribbon, what we want to do is measure how far the bottom edge of this ribbon will be from the edge of the hem. If you're watching this video to place ribbon on a vest or a shirt, I would suggest always working with the ribbon that's going to be closest to the hem. So in some cases on a vest or a shirt, you're going to be placing the ribbons close to the bottom of the vest or shirt. Sometimes you place them towards the top of it though, for instance in the like back shoulder area. In that case, then you'll be starting with the topmost ribbon that's closest to the neck and shoulder line. Whatever ribbon is closest to the edge of the fabric, that's the one we're going to start with. This is where those rulers come into place. I always like to note that you have hem allowance here, so when you're designing how far away to put the bottom ribbon from the hem, always remember that a portion of this fabric is going to be missing when you hem the skirt. So just make sure you are envisioning that when you do this. But I think for this skirt in particular, I want to start placing the bottom ribbon about 5.5 inches from the bottom of the skirt. Again, this is where your creativity and your designing comes into play. There's no right or wrong distance from the hem to place the bottom ribbon. But if you're looking for any suggestions from me, I would say anywhere from like 5 to 6 inches is a good starting point. You can, of course, place ribbons closer to the hem or further away. That's up to you and what you want to do, how you want your skirt to look. So now using a glue stick, I'm going to turn this ribbon over so that the wrong side is facing up. And I'm going to put some glue on it. I would put a healthy amount because this school glue isn't the strongest glue. It's just meant to hold it in place until you take it to the sewing machine. Then I'm going to place the ruler up to the edge of the fabric. I wanted 5.5 inches away from the edge. And I'm going to turn this around. And line up the bottom of the ribbon with the 0, or with the ruler. And now it is 5.5 inches away from the edge. Then I'm going to continue doing that, lining up the edge of the ribbon 5.5 inches away from the edge of the skirt. And I'm only going to do sections at a time because the glue will dry up if you try and put it on an entire ribbon. Always taking care that a little bit of ribbon is hanging off of the edge. You want a little too much, not too little. And when you get to the other end, go ahead and snip off the rest of the ribbon. Again, leaving some at the end. Now we have our first ribbon glued to the fabric. I don't suggest gluing more than one ribbon at a time. This isn't the strongest glue, and a lot of the times when people glue multiple ribbons on, the ribbons end up kind of falling off as they're sewing on earlier ribbons. So yeah, glue and sew on each ribbon at a time. Unless you are placing 2 ribbons right next to each other. In that case, you'll do the first 2 ribbons at a time. So if you're placing them right next to each other, go ahead and glue that second ribbon on and then take it to the sewing machine. If you are having any gaps between your ribbons, then we're going to only do the 1 ribbon and take that to the sewing machine. So let's go. Don't mind my dirty old sewing machine, but the stitch that we're going to be using to put the ribbons on is a zigzag stitch. So if you look closely at this dial here, I have it on straight stitch right now. So I'm going to switch that to a zigzag. And then I'm going to go up to the width, which normally when you have a straight stitch, it'll be on a 0. For the zigzag, I would suggest around a 2 or 3. You can go a little bit larger than 3 if you are super beginner or you have a hard time keeping sewing a straight line. And then the length, I suggest keeping at about a 3. Now I'm gonna take my ribbon to the sewing machine, and I wanna line up the edge of my ribbon with the middle of this foot here and put the foot of my sewing machine down. And the reason that we use a zigzag stitch is because one side of the zigzag is going to catch the fabric and one side of the zigzag is going to catch the ribbon, and it will hold the ribbon to the fabric. You can use a straight stitch for this. I have seen people do that and it looks okay. I just typically like to suggest the zigzag. I think that it's easiest for beginners and will reduce any puckering, or if you aren't able to sew in a straight line, the zigzag is helpful for that as well. If you are sewing the ribbons right next to each other, then you're going to line up that point at which these ribbons touch with the line of this foot here. And when you use the zigzag stitch, one side of the zigzag is going to catch this ribbon and the other side of the zigzag stitch will catch this ribbon, so that you only have to sew once and collect or stitch down both ribbons. And this is what it'll end up looking like. There is a little less sewing involved when you have ribbons touching, because the one stitch will hold down both of these instead of you doing 2 different stitches for each ribbon. So the next step is going to be sewing down the edge of the skirt. Now, like I just said, if you have 2 ribbons laying next to each other, you would be stitching them both down. In the case of this skirt, however, I am going to be having gaps between the ribbons. That's a part of my design, which is great because now I can show you the other method for attaching the ribbon. So I'm going to sew this on real quick and then I'll be right back to show you how to do that. All right, so the other method is to measure as you go. This is certainly easier for applying subsequent ribbons versus applying the bottom ribbon. It is kind of hard to measure from the hem as you're going, since the hem could be running into the edge of the sewing machine here. But sometimes I just find this way a little faster, particularly when I'm working with easy to work with fabrics like cotton. The distance between ribbons is another design choice of yours. That's completely up to you. Sometimes you might want to choose an inch. Sometimes you can choose a ½ inch. You can get really particular and go down to the 1/8. In this case, I'm going to be choosing 1 inch or 1 1/4 inch. So measuring from the edge of this ribbon here, I'm going to line up the edge of the other ribbon so that they are 1 1/4 inch apart. And just like before, I'm going to line up the edge of this new ribbon up with the center point of the sewing foot. So now we've measured 1 1/4 inch at the very beginning. Now I'm going to take this down a little further, probably just like a couple inches at a time. And I'm going to measure 1 1/4 inch again and repeat that process as before, lining up the ribbon with that. Then I'm going to go ahead and stitch down to the point at which I measured. Now that I've reached that point, I'm going to continue just repeating this process over and over again. I'll go down a few inches, measure, line up, sew. Go down a few inches, line up, and sew. This, in my opinion, it helps save time, I think. I think that it takes time to apply the glue and lay it down and smooth it out, and also risk it detaching from the skirt when you bring it to the machine. And once I finish this side, then I can just stitch the other side, no measuring or anything. One other quick note that I forgot to include before is I like to leave the ribbon attached to the roll when I use this method, just so I I feel like it conserves if I end up using less ribbon than I intended, and it saves me from having cut a ribbon too short as well. So after I sew that first stitch, then I'll go ahead and snip the ribbon from the roll. So once you get the first few ribbons down, it's really easy from then on there. It's just repeating the same process over and over again until you get all of the ribbons on. I just want to show you here the reason that we meticulously measure everything. Why I suggest measuring instead of just slapping some glue on some ribbon and then eyeballing where they go on the skirt. Measuring makes sure that your ribbons are going to be nice and straight on the skirt and that they're not going to do any sort of like warping or wiggling onto the skirt. Especially movement can happen while you're sewing as well. Another reason is because you can also make sure that you are doing it the exact same on each panel. That way when you line up the edge of the hem, so that when you sew your side seam, your ribbons line up and aren't mismatched. Here's just a quick close-up of the seam. This is what measuring does for you. Some ribbon skirts have dangles of ribbon hanging from the side seams on them, and I have a really easy way for you to be able to do that. Now, if you are not applying dangles to your ribbon skirt, you can go ahead and close up the side seam. I go through all the steps of assembling a ribbon skirt together in another video that will be in the playlist, which will be linked in the description box. But let's say you do want to put dangles on your ribbon skirt. Then what you're going to want to do is first decide how long you want your dangles to be. One thing that can help you decide on how long you want them to be is considering the very bottom ribbon. How far do you want the dangles to dangle past your ribbon skirt? Again, remembering that if a ½ inch to an inch of this is going to go away, you just might want to consider if you want the dangles to be kind of flush with where the bottom will be, if you want the dangles to be a little shorter, or if you don't mind them hanging below your skirt a little bit. Just how long do you want your dangles to be is kind of up to you. It's a design choice, but you wouldn't want to just cut from then and there. So let's say I want mine to be this long. This is 9 inches long. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut this ribbon to be 18 inches long. You can either measure that, or I like to just fold them in half and then cut from there. And then to attach them to the skirt, you're going to take the folded edge and place that on the outside of the side seam. But we're actually going to tuck the ribbons in between the two panels before we sew the side seam together. So lining up the ribbons, excuse me for using a different ribbon, by the way, I just have a lot of this, so I feel comfortable by wasting a little bit. But yeah, you're going to line up the ribbon with the ribbon that it will be dangling from, and then face this ribbon on the inside of the skirt. Sometimes I like to take a pin and pin the inside here, just to really make sure that this does not move anywhere near what I'm going to be stitching. If it does, then you have to rip that stitch out, and that can be pretty annoying. And then once you get your dangle on the one panel, then you're going to sandwich it in between the two panels. And I always suggest making sure that that is pinned down, that all of these layers are pinned together. Once you do that, then that's when you will go forward with doing the side seam. And once you sew that side seam, what will result is the ribbon is going to be popping out of that seam. So you can either leave the ribbon straight like this, or you can cut a little banner-like design into it. So you would cut angled up towards the middle, and then from the other side, the same. You always want to fray block the ends of your ribbon. Satin ribbon is basically plastic, so you just take a lighter up to the very edge and burn it a little bit, and it'll stop it from fraying. People say that this fray blocks the ribbon. After that, I still suggest burning the end. Dangling ribbons from a ribbon shirt or vest is the same way. I want to determine how long I want the dangle to be, and then I'm going to fold it in half and have this folded edge. You can have just one ribbon dangling. That's just up to you, I guess. Another design creativity feature of yours. But in order to dangle ribbon from a shirt or vest, what you'll want to do is, before completely sewing on the ribbon that the dangle will be dangling from, you'll want to leave one side open before you place the dangles in. You can go ahead and sew the one side before you do this, and that is so you can take the folded edge of the dangle and tuck it underneath the ribbon it'll be hanging from. And again, always pin that into place. And once you do that, then you can go ahead and stitch over that. Right here would be stitching over both of them. So that's everything I have to share about applying ribbons to garments. I hope that was easy to understand and helpful. This is how I teach people in real life. This is how I do it in real life. If you have any other methods or any comments on anything that was in this video, go ahead and put them in the comments below. I'm sure other people can learn from you. Other people, including myself, too. Anyway, I hope you liked this video. I'll see you on the next installment of this series. Till then, Bama Pig Wabman.